Yo, dig this. You're a human being, not a human doing. You're a human being, not a human doing. I just listened to an interview, and this brother posed the question. He said, "If you stop doing what you do, who are you?" But because the thing is, a lot of us are so caught up as it pertains to our identity and is wrapped up in what we do. But the reality is, what you do is not who you are. That's a component of who you are. But ultimately, what you do is just simply what you do. But I want to ask that question to you all. If you stop doing what you're doing, who are you? And most are going to have issues with that. Now, if you really take a step back and you've listened to some of my content, with the Mindset QB, you'll come to understand that there are five components to your mindset: your experiences, your beliefs, your relationships, how you view yourself, and the stories you tell yourself. How you view yourself, that's your identity. See, a lot of times our mindset is truly caught up in our identity. And a lot of people have issues with their mindset because they have issues with their identity. Who are you? If you strip away what you do, who are you? An exercise that I run with individuals or clients when I'm doing executive coaching, a lot of times I will go through the exercise of having them introduce themselves. But I have them introduce themselves and they can't use any credentials, education, or any, name dropping. They just have to introduce themselves. It's actually a very challenging exercise because what it forces you to do, or what it's forcing, my clients to do, is to introduce themselves based off of who they are, what they're interested in, the things that they like to do, some of the things that they've accomplished, not the awards. I don't care about the name dropping and the awards, but the things that you've created, the things that you've done. Like, it forces you to really introduce yourself, not introduce an identity of yourself, or introduce a component of yourself, or introduce an avatar or a character of yourself. It actually challenges you to introduce yourself. And it's funny because once you get through with the exercise, a lot of individuals really look at themselves totally different because we always focus on what's on the surface, especially when it comes to a first interaction. Think about it like this: when you interact and meet with somebody, what is typically one of the first questions out of their mouths? So, what do you do? Think about it. So, what do you do? Hey, my name is Mike Dorsey, etc. Oh, awesome. So, what do you do? How do you make a living? Like, it's fascinating because individuals tend to hyper focus on what is important to them. And for a lot of them, what's most important is the identity, right? It's what you do because they then wrap that up into who you are. But we have to be mindful of understanding that what we do is just simply what we do. That's a component of who we are. That's not the full totality of who we are. Remember, and this was an opening for me to really just look at it through the lens of the fact that we are human beings, not human doings. God made us to be human beings, not human doings. Yes, we do things, but those things that we do not construct our total identity. And be careful allowing yourself to be identified as said thing that you do. I have various, friends and folks that I've connected and worked with that are like professional athletes. And when you talk to them about the transition from being a professional athlete to a regular civilian, same scenario with individuals who spent decades in the military, that transition from the military into civilian life, it's a challenging transition because for so long, your identity has been caught up in what you do, not simply who you are. And it's a process. But and we just have to be mindful of that because we're all human beings. We're all, imperfect. We all have challenges and struggles. But to work through challenges and struggles, we have to first identify things that are challenges and struggles. And the thing that's interesting is a lot of folks do not realize that being completely caught up in what you do and allowing that to be the full, all encompassing identity that you rock with is actually a problem. Because what happens when that gets taken away? What happens when you lose that job? What happens when, there's a change in executive leadership and you're no longer a part of the picture? What happens if you're a professional athlete and you get traded? What happens when you deal with an unfortunate injury and now forced into retirement earlier than expected? Right? What happens when those things happen, when those things, come to fruition? Because if you have your identity completely caught up into what you do, what happens when what you do changes? You're a human being, not a human doing. All right. Well, hey, this is your man, Coach Mike D, the Mindset QB. I'm not your Mindset QB. I'm actually my Mindset QB. But I'm here to encourage, empower, and inspire you to become the quarterback of your mindset. And one of those components is really understanding who you are, really understanding who you are, and recognizing and accepting the fact that what you do is not definitive or does not define who you are. So, y'all be blessed, well, and wise. Like, share, subscribe to the Mindset QB at Coach Mike D across social media, and I will holler at you later. Y'all have a great one. Peace.